Hey friends, tonight I'm going to tell you a true crime story, gently, so before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And if you want to make this feel a little more like a circle of friends, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, switch on a fan for a soft hum, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You rest your phone face down, let your shoulders sink, and picture the kind of street you almost never notice in daylight. Just another quiet block where hedges are squared off like little green shoeboxes, and porch lights make puddles on the sidewalks. You pass through one of those puddles now, your shadow long, a soft breeze combing the leaves. You tell yourself that in towns like this, nothing world-shaking happens. And yet that's exactly where the aftershocks tend to hit the hardest. You feel the cool edge of the night, hear the click of a sprinkler somewhere behind a fence, and step closer to a house where a question once moved in and never truly moved out. You find the front steps, the paint scuffed by years of shoes and grocery bags and mail carriers, and your hand lingers on the rail, cool metal, a little gritty with dust. You can almost smell last week's rain in the wood. The porch sags the way porches do when they've carried more laughter than money. And you remember, you know this place. You've walked by it, maybe not this exact house, but one like it, 100 times. It's the place you assure yourself is safe, because you need it to be safe. Then the door opens, years roll back, and you're standing inside the first night, the one that rewrote everything. You pad across a living room that feels frozen mid-exhale. A lamp's warm halo sits in the corner as if it's been waiting for someone to come home and never quite shut it off. On the low coffee table, a library book with a paper bookmark tucked exactly halfway, a cup ring stained into the wood like a watermark from a past life, and a thin layer of dust that's both too much and not enough. Your fingertip would draw a line if you tried, but you don't. You hold still. You listen. The refrigerator hums like a tire rolling along a faraway highway. Somewhere a clock ticks, the sound so gentle you have to lean toward it with your whole body. You take in the strange little things first, the things you'd tell a friend later because they're the only parts easy to admit. The jar of marbles on the windowsill, sorted by color as if rainbows could be managed and rehearsed. The ceramic chicken on the stove, its beak permanently open, as if it's about to say something crucial. And the oddest one, a single pink lawn flamingo you find in the laundry room, its metal legs muddy, as though it took a walk and got lost. You smile at it, because you're human, and because humor still tries to live where it isn't always invited. Then you notice what doesn't fit. The phone was off its cradle and stretched like a discarded ribbon across the kitchen counter. The back door is not fully latched. A kitchen chair slightly tucked out as if someone stood up quickly and forgot this was a place where people sit. You tell yourself maybe it's a mess of ordinary mistakes. You tell yourself you've left chairs out before. But your breath changes. Your pulse, too. A small detective is waking up in your chest, and it doesn't care that you came here to relax. It wants answers, and it wants them quiet. Across the hall is a room that still feels warm heat caught in the fibers of the bedding, in the wool of an old sweater folded on a chair. You pause, letting the temperature rise to your skin. You notice the practical things, because you are the kind of person who notices practical things. A tote bag by the dresser, handle frayed. A key ring with 3 keys and a supermarket rewards card. A half-finished list. Bath, soap, light bulbs, cat litter, call mom. Normal, normal, normal. And then, as always happens, normal runs out. There's something else, some shadow on the calendar of the day that refuses to line up. You can feel the neighborhood outside, dogs sighing into their sleep, a garage door coughing to a close, 3 houses down, and the flame of a TV flickering blue on somebody's wall. You step back to the living room and stand under the ceiling fan, letting the soft wind wash over you. You remind yourself of a simple truth. In 1998, the FBI's National DNA Database, CODIS, became fully operational. And since then, swabs and samples have turned whispers into names. Tonight, though, you're walking before the answers. In that limbo where people clutch each other and say, "It doesn't make sense," as if sense were a door that could be opened by the right set of words. You pick up the library book and read the bookmark like a fossil. A checkout slip stamped with dates, neat inked circles marching toward the present. You trace the line back to a little branch library with creaky floors and a line of potted ferns suffering nobly by the windows. You picture the librarian everyone calls her Miss Wynne, though, she's only in her 30s because that's a detail the neighbors remember. She is brisk in a kind way, always telling kids to keep their voices down but grinning as she does it. She lives here, in this house. And this is her mug ring, her tote bag, and her grocery list. She is the person who, on a perfectly reasonable Wednesday, did not show up for work. You are the one who imagines the calls first, how the assistant would dial, how the phone would ring into the empty room and ring and ring. You're the one who imagines the sheriff's deputy stepping inside and saying the careful words that split time like a zipper. We're just here to make sure everything's all right. You picture the gentle knock, the half-latched door yielding, the deputy's hand pausing over the lamp switch, and the moment the house becomes a scene. You're not asked to be brave. You're asked to notice. You notice the cat food is out, but untouched. The kind that smells like a promise to a small, picky animal. You notice the calendar pinned to the fridge. A red circle around Friday with the words plant swap scrawled next to it. You notice the little kitchen radio turned to a talk station. The volume low, the voice a thin thread that keeps unraveling and never quite falls away. And you notice the neighbor across the alley, a retired mailman who waters his tomatoes in an army of 5-gallon buckets, standing by the chain-link fence. He will tell anyone who asks that he saw a sedan pause by the alley that afternoon, a color hard to name, somewhere between gray and the deeper shade of rain, and that's the last thing he recalls before the evening swallowed it. You step outside to the porch again for air that doesn't taste like secrets. The street's quiet is a lid pressed gently on the pot. A porch light on a timer clicks alive, and the halo it makes could be a coin on the sidewalk. You think about the town's civic calendar, the Saturday pancake fundraiser, the annual festival that paints chalk art down Main Street, and the kids' parade where a marching band tries to play Sweet Caroline without the brass section falling apart. You think about how crime here is supposed to be a chapter in a book you skim, not a sentence that interrupts the one you thought you were writing. It's easy to drift into the comfort of theories. People do it without knowing. They say, probably a stranger, because that pushes the fear to the horizon. They say, it had to be someone she knew, because that keeps the fear at home where they can watch it. You find yourself caught between those poles, a compass flipping. Criminologists still argue about whether small towns deter crime through tight social networks or simply delay detection because everyone assumes the best, an argument that never seems to finish. Like two trains passing at night and waving into darkness. You hold that in one hand and the quiet in the other and try to see how they fit. You walk the block the way an officer might, counting porch cameras and blind corners, maples and mailboxes. A flicker of movement catches your eye, the blue of a TV in an upstairs window, the silhouette of someone turning their head and not noticing you. In the distance, church bells toll 9, but they skip the 10th chime because a summer storm last year knocked something loose in the steeple. It's the kind of detail that sounds invented until you stand under that tower and hear the truth. Time can be precise and still be wrong. Back in the house, you find the little notebook Miss Wynne uses for scraps of thought she promises herself to type later. The handwriting leans forward like it's late to a meeting. We don't lose people, one line reads. We lose our maps. You let that sentence rest in the room. You think about the town's map, how it will be redrawn by this night, how the coffee shop will become the place people go to talk in careful, hushed voices, and the crossing guard will become the person who reminds everyone to be patient with each other at a 4-way stop. And the library will become the building where the air forever tastes like dust and the distinction between silence and the unsaid grows thin. You feel the mystery pull you to the mirror in the hall. You look, and the face there is yours, but not quite the version of you that pays closer attention, that hears engines idling, that notices who touched what and when. You think about gloves and door handles and the way habit leaves fingerprints you can't see. You remember another simple truth. Investigators often repeat that the first 2 days are a river swift, muddy, full of clues that will settle out of sight if they aren't caught. That's why the roads will be canvassed, the dumpsters checked, and the neighbors interviewed with gentle persistence. A refrigerator kicks a little louder, and the fan above you tosses cool air into your hair. Somewhere outside, a car door closes with a hollow thud that says someone's back where they belong. You step to the back door and try the latch. It clicks closed easily, obediently, too obediently. You imagine a moment when it didn't. You imagine a hand gloveless because some hands always are pressing down and pushing through. The small creak of hinges learning a new secret they never wanted. You hold the image carefully, without letting it sharpen. You don't need it sharp. You only need it held. Now you stand again in the doorway between the living room and the kitchen, and you let the whole house rise up around you like a photograph developing in a tray. The book, the chair, the radio, the cat food, the notebook. You don't try to solve it yet. You let the mystery be a room you can walk through without touching the walls. You also let yourself register one last peculiar detail you'll tuck in your pocket for later. The VCR under the TV. Its clock blinking 12. But the tape inside is paused exactly in the middle of a home-recorded nature documentary, the ocean frozen in a single long, pale wave. How does that happen, you wonder, when nobody's pressed pause in weeks? You don't know. That's okay. Not knowing is a shape you can rest in for now. When you step back outside, the night meets you with a deeper hush, as if it has listened and is now choosing its next words. You breathe them in, prepare to follow the story wherever it goes, to the alley with the paused sedan, to the library with its kind order, to the neighbor with the tomatoes, to the records that can't be erased. You promise to move gently, to pay attention, to keep the questions soft and the lights softer. You are ready to leave Act 1 and cross into the part where the days begin to pile up and the town learns how to carry a weight it never asked for. A weight that may be balanced by something astonishing later. Something that will make people lean back from their screens and whisper the same 7 words in shock. I can't believe it was that person. Morning arrives in this town the way a hand settles on a shoulder, careful, steady, as if not to startle anyone out of the dream they need to finish. You walk it the way you always do. Shoes on the squeaky boards of your porch, coffee turning your breath friendly in the cool air, and a quiet promise that you will try to be kinder to the world than the world sometimes is to you. You're not a detective. You tell yourself that twice while you cross the street to Miss Wynn's block, once because it's true, and once because repeating it lets you approach the door without the weight of being right. You're a neighbor. You are curiosity arranged in human shape. A yellow ribbon whispers from a stake in the lawn. More symbolic now than useful. The first 2 days were a river. Now the current slows. Paper cups from volunteers' coffee runs live in the recycling bin like a little city of hats. You remember every small kindness. Someone set out a basket of granola bars. Someone else opened their garage and stacked cases of water. Someone taped a sign to a light pole with a phone number for tips written in big numbers that look like they were drawn by a hopeful child. The town is learning a new choreography, how to cross paths without colliding, how to say, "How are you?" and mean, "How are you?" actually, and how to keep showing up. You drift past the tomatoes. Now someone else is watering them for the retired mailman, and you take in the alley that turned into a sentence no one can finish. Tires hiss on the road beyond, and somewhere a screen door gives up a tiny squeak. You note corners and sightlines, but the truth is you're also listening for the undertones, how the block's usual hum has shifted a half step lower. Even the morning birds seem to test the air first. The sheriff's department sets up a mobile command post, a white trailer with an antenna, like a question mark. You stand far enough away to be polite, and close enough to feel the heartbeat of the work. Clipboards appear, vests with reflective stripes, and walkie-talkies that whisper a language of brevity and patience. You notice how people learn to speak in drafts, a sentence always ready to be revised when the next fact arrives. You make your rounds. The corner store, where the cashier remembers Miss Wynn's fondness for peppermint tea and how she always picked the second newspaper in the stack because the first one felt two-handled. The library, where 2 teenagers in hoodies sit on the carpet and whisper about a rumor that doesn't grow when it's aired out in daylight. The hair salon, where someone says they saw a grayish sedan but swears it might have been blue in the shade. And your own kitchen table, where you draw the block from memory and realize how often your mind makes the same wrong turn. Maps are like moods, subject to drift. In the library, the air tastes like old paper and lemon cleaner, and the dust motes feel heavier, as if they've been asked to bear witness. The replacement librarian, flown in from a larger branch, is brisk in a different way, almost apologizing with her smile. You ask to see the logbook, and you're surprised when she says yes. Names stack themselves chronologically, soft columns of habit. You run your finger above the ink, not touching, and find the last date Miss Wynne stamped in a returned novel. It's a small human act, the kind that shouldn't have significance, and yet today it collects meaning the way a shore collects seaweed. You notice the oddest object in the lost and found. A single roller skate, left foot scuffed toe, neon green laces, and a sticker on the heel that reads, "Property of Lane 3. Who leaves behind just one skate at a library?" You flip it over. The wheels are gum-studded and rimmed with grit. You imagine the person hopping out, 1 foot high, 1 foot bare, laughing or pretending not to be embarrassed. Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's a strange breadcrumb in a world that rarely announces its trails. As you lean against a shelf, a historical fact steadies you. In 2018, investigators publicly credited genetic genealogy with identifying the man known as the Golden State Killer, and it changed what cold case meant in everyday speech. You tuck that into your pocket, not as a promise, but as a possibility that may visit this town someday like a long-awaited letter. For now, the letterbox is empty. For now, the work is ordinary, careful, and human. Outside, you stand in the shade and watch 2 detectives talk with the retired mailman. He points at the alley. Then his eyes travel to a mark on the fence post, a faint notch like a thumbnail pressed into wood. It might be from someone turning too quickly with a lawnmower. It might be nothing. He shrugs, and the shrug says, "I wish I knew which parts matter." You do too. Days stack. A week, then 2. The posters go from crisp to frayed, from bright to sunsoft. Someone replaces them with fresh copies, and the tape squeals as it peels. You walk the block at night and learn the angles of porch lights, the tiny variations in the way each bulb hums. You time the motion sensors how many seconds from detection to glow to fade. You notice a sensor in the backyard of a house 2 lots over takes a full 7 count to surrender to the dark. You wonder if that matters. You write 7 count light on a sticky note anyway, because your mind wants to keep its own evidence box. A podcaster reaches out, voice friendly. Questions more so, and you talk, because you're human, and the story has become a kind of shared air. They ask what the town feels like. You tell them it feels like a pause held a little too long. You don't mention the way your shoulders inch toward your ears when a car idles in the alley now, or how you've started noting license plates without meaning to. You don't mention that you sometimes wake at 3 a.m. and listen for the sound of the back door latch at your own house, even though you replaced it and saved the receipt in the drawer with the takeout menus. The sheriff holds a community meeting at the high school gym. The bleachers smell like floor wax and popcorn, which is how gyms everywhere smell, and that comforts you more than it should. The slide deck promises transparency, and the detective with kind eyes explains timelines, search radii, and why rumors are like glitter. They stick where you least want them. You raise your hand and ask about the VCR tape. The detective smiles at the oddness of the detail and says they collected it. Lab backlog, you know. That's how the world runs now. Too much happening, not enough hands to hold it all. Theories bloom because silence is a garden that grows whatever gets planted. Maybe it was a drifter, someone says at the laundromat, eyes on a tumbling quilt. Maybe it was the ex from 2 towns over, whispers a barista whose earrings look like little crescent moons. Maybe it was a misunderstanding that became a mistake, that became a secret. You hear them all, and you carry them like stones until you can lay them down. You take one more walk through the house when the family gives permission for a small group to help tidy. You fold towels, you dust the ceramic chicken, and you put the lawn flamingo back on the porch. Just for a moment, because it feels like a friend waiting out front instead of hiding in a laundry room. You find, tucked in a cookbook, a slip of paper with a recipe for rhubarb pie written in Miss Wynne's quick hand. At the bottom, bake until it smells like June. You close your eyes and breathe in the empty kitchen. And for 1 second it does. It smells like sweetness on hot air, like sunlight on the back of your neck, like a pie cooling on the sill of a world that never had to learn the word scene for a living room. Weeks turn to months, then a year. You do what people do. You learn to hold two truths: life continues and the missing remain. The library hires a new head librarian carefully, with a committee that includes a teacher who cries when she talks about story time. The cat who spent the first month moving like a ghost chooses a new person and starts sleeping on their feet. You hear about a box of files in a small office with one window where the detective keeps the case close. Birthdays pass. The plant swap happens again, and this time someone brings a tray of marigolds labeled Wins Gold, because people have to make meaning out of the thin air, or else the thin air makes meaning out of them. There's an odd rumor that will not die that the lawn flamingo appears, from time to time, in other yards at night, as if it's walking its own possibilities. The first time you see it, you laugh. The second time, you feel a prickle at your neck. The third time, you follow it, only to discover a group of teenagers gently pranking the block as a fundraiser. You donate, they move the flamingo to another lawn, and you post a picture with a caption that reads, like a wink. It is silly and kind, and it stitches something together. Along the way, you learn a cold case vocabulary you didn't plan to keep. Touch DNA, familial search, probative value, chain of custody. You read late at night, thumbnail, dragging along a screen, about why some samples don't amplify, why some profiles are partial, and how databases are both treasure maps and boundary stones. You learn another fact that tethers you. In 2004, the National Violent Criminal Apprehension Program moved to a web-based system, widening the net for pattern recognition across jurisdictions. It makes you hopeful in a cautious way, like watching clouds part and still carrying an umbrella. There's an academic argument that catches you and won't let go. Psychologists and criminologists still debate whether memory conformity, the way group discussion nudges people's recollections into alignment, helps communities settle on truth, or steers them away from it at precisely the moment the play's 70s reg. Details matter most. You think about the community page online. The way one person's "I think it was blue" becomes another's "it was blue," becomes another's "it was definitely blue." While the retired mailman, gentle, keeps saying grayish, like rain. You decide to trust his weather word. One winter, the alley floods and freezes, and kids scuff their boots into a tiny rink, leaving arcs like fingernail moons. You walk it at dusk and notice something you missed months ago. A notch in the fence opposite the first notch, the same height as if two corners met hands and said yes to each other. You note it again, but it is still a detail without a sentence to live in. Every anniversary brings a vigil on the library lawn. Candles turn faces into warm portraits. The wind nudges the flames into tiny bows. A teenager reads a poem, and the line that catches the town's breath is simple. We set a place for the future. You take a candle home and let it burn down in your kitchen while you make tea, and sit with the ordinary miracle of electricity and heat and water and the way all of it becomes background until the moment you need it to be foreground. Then, one afternoon, years later, after the town has learned to carry the question without dropping it, you're at the hardware store, comparing screws like they are personality types, when your phone hums with a text that feels like a change in barometric pressure. It's short. It's from the volunteer who still brings donuts on the first Saturday of every month. Are you seeing this? Press conference at 4. You check the county page. The sheriff's office has posted a seal and the words "Major Development" in the Wynn investigation. Your body answers before your mind does. Your skin prickles, your breath shortens, and your fingers go cold even as your face is warm. You leave the screws where they are. They'll forgive you. You stand on the green in front of the courthouse as the sky burns the color of late citrus, and the crowd gathers as if the town itself has muscle memory for assembly. The flag above snaps. Cameras point, as if pointing is a way to hold the future steady. The sheriff steps to the mic and thanks everyone in a voice that wobbles once and then finds its footing. He mentions partners from the state lab, a retired detective who kept pushing, and an analyst whose patience should be studied. He says the words you have rehearsed in your head so many times, you almost miss them when they finally arrive. We have made an arrest. For a moment, the green becomes a lake, and everyone on it is a stone-skipping shock, then ripples. Then the sinking realization that the shape of the shore is about to change. You look at the faces around you, all wearing the same expression, a blend of grief, relief, and the worry that the answer might be harder to hold than the question. You realize how much you've relied on not knowing, because not knowing is general. Knowing is specific. Knowing points, knowing names. The sheriff reads a name you recognize in the way you recognize the shape of your own gate, in the dark familiar, ordinary, the kind of name the mail used to make a mistake with, and the right house somehow still got the letter. You try to line up the name with the years of passing that person on the sidewalk, or the nod at the winter parade, or the time you both reached for the same jar of pickles and laughed because it felt like a sitcom. The crowd turns into a chorus of whispers, the kind that wrap the heart in a draft. Somewhere, someone drops a phone and scrambles to catch it. Somewhere else, someone says, "No," softly, because the story has just bent in a way that breaks the mind's furniture. The sheriff names the charges. The legal phrase is clank, iron on iron. He explains that advances in testing allowed a partial profile to be developed, and that the partial, when compared, found resonance where none had been heard before. He nods to the analyst again. You think of the Golden State Killer press conference you watched on a laptop years ago, and how some of those ripples finally reached this little shore. The detective with kind eyes steps forward, voice even as a calm river, and thanks the community for calling in tips, for showing up, and for staying with the question until an answer could find them. You hear yourself ask the smallest question, just a breath, just a syllable. How? The word leaves your mouth like a fledgling and tries its wings. The sheriff says the answer is still in process, testing, filings, hearings. He asks for patience one last time, but it's a different kind of patience now. The kind that happens when you're actually moving. You walk home in the gold light that never lasts, and notice how the houses look less like backdrops and more like faces, windows for eyes, roofs for brows, and porches as expressive as mouths. It hits you that the arrest is not the end. It's the door to the inside of the story you've been standing on the porch of for years. You pass the library, where the new head librarian has taped a note to the window that reads, "We are open. We are with you." You read it twice, and only on the second pass do you understand the double meaning. At your own kitchen table, you spread out your sticky notes, the ones that traveled purses and pockets and seasons, and you let them form constellations. 7-count light, roller skate, VCR wave, alley notch, grayish like rain, peppermint tea, rhubarb smells like June. You don't throw any away yet. Your hand moves over them the way you'd move your hand over the back of a sleeping dog, careful not to wake what has finally found rest. The town's group chat pings without pause. Your phone becomes a small hive. You answer a few, then set it face down, like at the beginning of all this, and let quiet be a person in the room with you. Outside, night comes on as softly as the first part of a lullaby. The fan stirs the air, the porch light hums its steady note. You think of the odd, private promises you made to yourself over the years. If there's ever an answer, I'll bake a pie. I'll forgive the fence for being a fence and not a wall. I'll stop replaying the backdoor latch in my head like a looped song. You stand and test the latch one more time. It clicks. It's fine. You smile at the habit and decide to let it go incrementally, not all at once. Letting go is a series, not a single. Down the block, someone laughs in a way that says the knot in their chest just loosened. In another house, someone else cries in a way that says the knot in theirs just tightened. Both sounds belong. Both are part of the same chord, the one a town plays when it learns a truth that sits heavy and luminous at the center of everything. You'll sleep tonight, but not deeply. You'll wake in the gray hour and find yourself murmuring a single surprise sentence into the pillow, a sentence that will echo through the community for weeks, in posts and pews and checkout lines. I can't believe it was that person. And then, you'll close your eyes and see the living room again, the lamp waiting, the book on the table, and the ocean on the paused tape, a long pale wave holding its breath for just a little while longer before it finally breaks. Spring slides in quietly, as if it, too, has been holding its breath through the winter of waiting. You feel it before you see it, the smell of thawing soil, the distant laughter of kids riding bikes again, and the low hum of lawnmowers waking from hibernation. The town looks the same, but it isn't. You can sense it in the way people glance over their shoulders, the way conversations soften at the mention of her name, and the way relief and grief now share the same park bench. You walk past the courthouse steps where the arrest was announced, now just a place pigeons argue about crumbs. The trial is weeks away. The reporters have mostly left, leaving behind the faint scent of coffee and urgency. But the echo remains: the microphones, the flashbulbs, the way everyone froze when the sheriff said the name. The person now accused, someone you've passed countless times, someone who carried the same grocery bags, nodded at the same stoplights. The shock lingers like static in the air. You taste it when you breathe. You stand outside the library again. The windows have been washed. The "We Are Open" sign still hangs, steady as a heartbeat. Inside, they've restored Miss Wynn's reading nook, placing her favorite chair beneath the big window and setting her old ceramic chicken on the side table. You notice something new: a framed photo of her smiling, sunlight caught in her hair, eyes bright like she just told a secret and trusted you to keep it. The caption reads, "For our friend who loved quiet places and good stories." You touch the glass and whisper, "She'd like this." The head librarian nods to you from behind the desk. You've become part of the place now, part of its muscle memory. You sign out a book you don't really plan to read, something about the psychology of memory and trauma. The words blur together after a few pages, but one line sticks. Closure is not a door, it's a hallway. You think about that for a long time, tracing its truth like a groove in wood. Hallways have echoes and turns and the possibility of light at the end. You think maybe that's what this story is, a hallway the town must walk together. Later that evening, you stop at the diner, the same one with sticky menus and good coffee that never cools down. A few regulars nod. The waitress, who's been working there since the year Miss Wynn disappeared, pours you a refill without asking. You notice how her hands tremble just slightly when someone at the counter mentions trial. The sound of silverware clinking against plates. It's a normal night, trying hard to stay normal. Outside, the sky bruises into evening. Streetlights wake one by one like tired sentries. You take the long way home, past the alley where the story began, now repaved with floodlights installed. You pause at the fence. The old notches are still there, but softened by time, the way even scars begin to forget their sharpness. A patch of violets grows near the base, unexpected, delicate, determined. You crouch and brush your fingers along the petals. Life insists on coming back, even in places that once whispered of endings. You think of all the strange human details that guided you here. A half-latched door, a paused tape, a roller skate abandoned in the wrong place. You think about how every mystery is made of two halves, the world that vanished and the world that stayed. And here you are, caught between them, watching both breathe again. At the trial, the courtroom feels too small for the weight it carries. You sit near the back, hands folded, heart steady but listening. The accused sits at the defense table, eyes low, jaw tight. You realize that even the guilty look human in the light. It's one of the universe's cruel consistencies. The prosecutor speaks first, voice calm but edged like glass. Evidence, timelines, DNA, motive. Each word falls like a drop of ink spreading across the fabric of the story. The defense counters with memory, circumstance, and coincidence. The jurors blink like they're underwater. You remember one more truth: how in 2021, the National Institute of Justice confirmed that around 250,000 homicide cases remain unsolved in the U.S. Cold files that sleep in boxes waiting for someone patient enough to wake them. The thought gives you both hope and sorrow. You realize that even if this case ends, others will still whisper from their shelves. The world is full of questions wearing human faces. When the verdict finally comes, it arrives not with fanfare, but with breath sharp, collective, half disbelief. Guilty on all counts. The room fills with a silence so deep it hums. You watch the sheriff bow his head, the detective with kind eyes press a palm against the table, and the librarian quietly cry. You stay seated, hands clasped, not out of shock anymore, but reverence for the way truth, when it finally arrives, doesn't roar. It exhales. Outside, the rain begins. Light at first, then steadier. As if the sky has decided to wash the town clean. You step into it, let it slide down your arms, your face, and the collar of your coat. The street smells like wet leaves and possibility. You walk home slowly, shoes darkening with each step. The fan will hum again tonight. The lights will go off. The town will rest for the first time in years. But you'll stay awake a little longer, watching the reflections in the puddles, streetlights bending, memories shimmering, the faint outline of the house where it all began now, just another silhouette in the dark. You whisper into the quiet. We did it. We remembered her. And the night answers not with thunder, but with calm. You go inside, dry your hands, and turn the fan on low. The sound wraps around you like a lullaby. The air feels lighter now, almost forgiving. You think of Miss Wynn's words in her notebook times. We don't lose people. We lose our maps. Asterisk. You smile because the map has redrawn itself, line by line, into something softer, something that leads you home. And as you settle under the weight of your blanket, you know the town will keep its light on for her. Always, maybe in a library lamp, maybe in a porch bulb that hums too long, maybe in the violet flowers that bloom where fear once lived. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. But for now, sleep well.